So there's a story that's shared about the night after Buddha attained his enlightenment, where he spent the next several days really contemplating and reflecting and deepening his understanding of what he just experienced, of his attainments, of his enlightenment, really letting it in. And at that point in time, as the story goes, the Buddha wasn't really intending on teaching. It wasn't like he had a career path set before him. In fact, as the story goes, as I've heard it, he was reluctant to go forth and teach. He had some real concerns. The Dharma can be subtle, and the Dharma can really be, I've gotten some feedback that it's hard to hear me. Is everybody hearing me? Can I have a thumbs up? Okay. So he was concerned, he had some misgivings or some concerns about teaching. The Dharma can be subtle. It can be really hard sometimes to embrace the truth of reality as it is and to live in this truth. Well, thankfully for us, we know that ultimately he did teach. But when I heard the story, I was thinking, the energy that he put during that time to consider this, to contemplate and to reflect on this was a skillful and wholesome use of energy. Is this going to really be beneficial? Is this really going to be helpful? Is this a choice that's going to be wise? And taking time to contemplate things like that also takes energy. When we talk about skillful and wholesome, what we're really just saying is what's fundamentally beneficial, what's helpful to ourselves, what's supportive, what's really called for, what's really needed. I heard this analogy from Dharma teacher Winnie Nizarko in a Dharma talk that she gave. She compares Dharma teachers to driving teachers. The driving teacher is teaching you all the different functions and the parts of the car and how you drive and giving you prompts and supports and instructions and guidance. The only difference is that this driving teacher is not in the car with you. You're on your own in your car. And then after you drive, the driving teacher knocks on your window and says, "Hey, how was it? How'd it go?" Because we're each in our own car, driving on our path. When I heard this analogy, I was laughing to myself. It feels more to me like the driving teacher who's attempting to learn how to drive his or her car as they're also teaching somebody else how to drive that car. That feels much more true for me. So what I share with you today is just really me learning how to drive my car. So there's this gap between reality and ideal. There's always this gap between what's ideal and what's our reality. In that gap, I can find myself really struggling, really experiencing confusion, creating real complexity and complicatedness. I find myself taking beliefs from my own life and creating this exaggerated, this inflated sense of responsibility. And ultimately, in that process, also experiencing, unintentionally, cultivating and experiencing an aversion, both for myself and my life. I can wind up seeking perfection in that striving that I find myself in. Certainly not liberation. Here's an example of this for myself. I think most of you, if not perhaps all of you, are regular, consistent attendees on this daily sit. And I'm not. I have 5 boys, I have 5 children and a dog. And I drive my 3rd son every single morning to school. Back and forth, it's close to 2 hours in total. Time that really, really, I wish I can spend in other ways. Which, if I wasn't doing, would free me up to be part of this daily sit regularly. And I really would like that. I want that because I value the experience of the Sangha and the daily sit. I want that because I value the teachings from my fellow teachers. I want that because I make up in my mind these notions of perfection and right and wrong, that the right thing to do is to be here regularly for you, for me, for my teaching mates. And in that ideal, I'm not there. I'm in the gap that's right smack in my reality, right? I can be here when I can be here, but not nearly as consistently as I wish I could be. And I can get really caught up in that type of striving. I mean, that's just one example. I can give many more. It's like driving the car and finding myself right in some dead-end street, frustrated. Why am I not getting to my destination? And exhausted by the energy that it's taking up. Weary, frustrated. So how do we know what is unskillful use of energy? Or as it translates in the Eightfold Path, right effort or unskillful effort, unwholesome effort. How do we know? The teacher Christina Feldman writes about this, and she writes beautifully that whenever happiness becomes a goal, separate and apart from where I actually am, this is unskillful effort. And we can feel the consequences of this type of striving. We feel it in our head. We feel it in the constriction of our thinking. We feel it in the reactive energy that we're experiencing in our body and the tightening, or in the shrinking or the deadening of our spirit. We're trying to get out of a life that simply won't go away. This is what it is right now, like it or not. Here it is. We get caught up in thoughts that create dualities, right? Good meditation, good practice, bad practice, the right way, the wrong way. Or we can tune into the use of willpower. I noticed this the other day in practice. I was tuning into my posture, and I noticed this, especially on retreat. This is something that can really play with my head. Trying to notice if I'm in a straight enough posture. Is my back straight? Now, there is something deeply skillful about good posture for many different reasons. But there's something really unskillful when I'm applying willpower to this moment. You know, is my back straight? Am I sitting right? Yeah, so we could do this on the cushion, and we do this in our life off the cushion as well. Another example of this can be the experience of anger, right? Anger inevitably arises for us. In unskillful effort, we then become reactive to anger, or fear for that matter, and get caught up in the experience. So we are expending energy and effort throughout our life, throughout our day. In the teaching in the Eightfold Path of right effort, there are 4 aspects to right effort. There's the aspect of guarding, abandoning, developing, and maintaining. I sometimes write for myself, GADM, GADM, guarding, abandoning, developing, and maintaining, as a way of trying to really internalize this with awareness. So we want to guard against the arising of unwholesome states of mind. How do I need to take care of myself? How do I need to approach this moment for myself? And then inevitably, when I find myself with an unwholesome state of mind, I'm caught up in reactivity. I need to abandon this. I need to summon my energy, my will, my commitment. Some people define Viriya as a heroic type of energy, as we've been discussing. To really turn to myself and say, no, this is not the way to speak to myself. This is not the way to approach this moment. To really be committed in that moment, to abandon something that feels, oh my gosh, it feels so true. It feels so accurate. It feels so familiar. And then to develop, what does it take to arise, for wholesome states to arise in me? The heart practices that we've spent so much time talking about and practicing. Skillful practice of mindful awareness without judgment, with a sense of care and understanding and appreciation for our fundamental humanness and the limitedness of what's available in a given moment for us. A hand over heart for, yeah, of course there's an ideal I want for myself. And there's nothing wrong with that ideal. But that's all it is. It's just that. I saw this beautiful analogy that was given to describe these four practices of guarding, abandoning, developing, and then maintaining. That's the fourth one, to maintain these wholesome states of mind. And it's likened to cultivating a garden, right? So you have these four kinds of effort when you're cultivating a garden as well. You have to avoid growing weeds in the garden. And then when you have weeds that have already grown in your garden, you have to remove them. So those are the first two efforts. And then the second part is about cultivating wholesome things. So we plant the fruits, the vegetables, the flowers that we want to plant. And then we maintain them in our garden, right? We take care of them. One way or another, we're going to be spending an energy and effort. It's either this way or that way. And in any given moment, that's really what's happening. We can take, it's not about finding effort. It's about recognizing the effort that's already here. We're efforting in one way or another around everything. I remember I shared in a previous Dharma talk with you this quote from teacher Ajahn Chah. He says, where's the noise? And where's me disturbing the noise? Unwittingly generating my own suffering. I love that. So there's noise. There's a reality that isn't ideal. There's something challenging for me in this drive of this car ride right now in my life. Okay. But me disturbing the noise is where the suffering really is. You know how I know? Because the same noise is there when I'm in a more wholesome state of mind and I'm not reacting to the noise and I'm not suffering in the same way. I don't need to read that somewhere or hear a teacher teach that. I get to experience this. I get to know this in the most important way that knowing is available for all of us. Teacher Christina Feldman shares this quote from a Chinese master. Do not consent to being bound by the events of your life, but never withdraw from them. Do not consent to being bound by the events of your life, but never withdraw from them. And only by acting thus can you merit the title of a liberated being. The way I relate to that, I'm not letting go of my ideals. I like the ideal that I want to be here on a regular basis, that I want my time freed up, that I value this enough to want that. I don't want to let go of that. But I also can't be bound by that. Well, thank you for letting me share.